If you are still writing SOPs in your business and you're at multiple 6 or 7 figures, we need to have a conversation. I am Melissa Franks, your host of the Opt-in podcast, and this is where we go from surviving to thriving in business. Today, we are going to be talking about the hidden cost of doing it yourself in your business. This is an interesting conversation for us to have, just coming off the back of the last 2 episodes that we did, which were all about how to take a vacation and return from a vacation. If you followed my advice and you're living this in real time, what you know is that your vacation taught you what's going really well in your business and what is going really wrong in your business. You know exactly where the holes and gaps are. You know exactly where you need to focus your time and attention. And before you go about fixing things yourself, I want you to listen. I want you to listen to this entire episode. And here's why. What you don't know is the expense that you're incurring by doing things yourself. Now, we could easily go through a mathematical breakdown, which we might do in a little bit, so you can see the real cost to your business. But before we get there, I want to share a story with you. This is from my corporate world. I have also experienced this with clients in the last few years, and the corporate example really, really resonates. So here we go. Once upon a time, in a very large, multi-billion-dollar company, there was an executive, and the executive had been with the company forever. I'm being a little bit of an exaggerator. This individual had been with the company for over 25 years. In fact, this individual had been with the company when technology systems were introduced for the first time. So they literally were the graduating class from paper pusher to automation. Isn't that amazing? That's such an amazing feat. And so what that means is that this individual, inside and out, lived and breathed the processes for his department. In fact, he knew them so well that he would quiz his team when they started talking about efficiency, about which step exactly things were getting hung up at. And he knew what they were talking about because he had done the job. It was amazing how at an executive level, he could still dive deep with his team and problem solve and troubleshoot. Here's the kicker. The team was implementing new technology. So not only was this gentleman going from paper pushing to the first wave of technology, he was now experiencing the second wave of technology. And this is where I came in. My responsibility in that team was to help with the transition and transformation. The technology had been built, and this was all about making sure that the business could use the technology in the most efficient way possible. Now, spoiler alert, the technology did such an amazing job at automating the things that they did that their old processes didn't work anymore. Those things that the executive knew inside and out were the things that were now broken. And the reason that I came in was because the team was getting very strong customer feedback that was negative. People were not happy. Things were taking too long. Things were getting sent in error. In fact, one gentleman's wife found out that he had a girlfriend who he bought a home for and had multiple cars in another state because we accidentally sent to the wife all of the documents that were supposed to go to the girlfriend. Real story, happened more than once. Anyway, this executive had managed the transformation on his own. He had said, I don't need help. I don't need anybody to write our standard operating procedures. We can do it ourselves. And what the result was is that he ended up replicating exactly what they used to do in the old world, except it didn't work in the new world. And the consequences were dire. They were dire. Clients and customers alike were complaining. They were screaming from the rooftops. Some of them were leaving. The team was incredibly frustrated. And When I came in to help right the ship, I came in with a consulting firm team behind me. And the price tag on that was nearly $1 million by the time we were finished. You see, not only had the business paid for the time and internal labor to write the new standard operating procedures, they then lost some business and had to spend human labor to address the complaints, and then had to pay almost $1 million to rewrite the standard operating procedures and retrain the team in order for them to get back to a place where they were operating efficiently with the new technology. The cost to the business was astronomical. And I share that example with you because it happens every single day in small businesses around the globe. It happens in big corporations too. And often we just fix it by putting a Band-Aid over it or doing exactly what I did, which was throwing cash at the problem to alleviate the pain point. And I'm here to tell you that you can actually avoid all of those problems, all of that pain, all of those learning lessons by listening to the next 20 minutes or so of this podcast. This was just one example, one of hundreds of examples where DIY has gone wrong in businesses because the person that's documenting the processes, the person that's doing the work, is no longer the most qualified individual for the job. You as the business owner, if you have gotten to a place where you are multiple 6 or multiple 7 or multiple 8 figures in your business, you know you're not the only person working in your business. As soon as you stop being the only person working in your business, you're not the expert in everything. Did you hear me? You're no longer the expert in everything, and that is on purpose. That is on purpose. As an entrepreneur, you are a generalist. You have a PhD in figuring it out. You're not an expert. You're not deep in competency that you need and specialization that's required for your business to operate at the size that it is now and for where it's going in the future. Entrepreneurs love to do it themselves. And there are a few reasons for this. One of the reasons is that you are a lifetime learner. You are ravenous with information. You are constantly reading books and podcasts and going to networking events and asking questions and investigating and filling yourself up with information. And when there is a task at hand that you haven't done before, it excites you to be able to roll up your sleeves and dive right in and experiment, to learn as you go. Heck, you started your business because you wanted to be able to figure it out and do it yourself. Sometimes doing it yourself isn't driven by the thrill of the learning process. It's driven by a fear of the expense. You firmly believe that it's going to be cheaper, maybe even faster if you did it versus getting somebody else to do it. You feel like nobody can do anything better than you anyway, right? That gets to the underlying need for control. It's your business. You're in charge. What you say goes. So you may be eager to do it yourself because you want to save some money. Or you just want to learn, and this is the best way to do it, getting your hands on the patient. Maybe you're in a position where you need to continue to control everything in your business. Or you're a little bit of a perfectionist and you want it done your way and only your way. Now, I see you and I hear you and I get it, and in various seasons of my life, I too made decisions based on those criteria. In fact, one would argue that I built my entire corporate career by being an avid learner and curious and having a keen eye on cost savings opportunities, and when if I did it myself, we could go faster and save some money and have better outcomes. I knew that I'd be able to deliver the results that I promised if I was in control. And those perfectionist tendencies got me up really early in the morning and kept me up really late at night and flying around the globe for a really long time. And through all of that, what I learned when I got to the C-suite was that there were diminishing returns. There were hidden trade-offs. There was real cost to me making decisions and acting through those lenses. And that's what's happening in your business. I understand the urge. I understand the push. I understand the desire so much to use those levers as rationale for why you should do something yourself. And I am here to tell you that your business is going to be stronger if you resist the urge, if you retrain the behavior, if you trust your team, if you do it differently. And this is especially difficult because doing it on your own was the right move early on. When it was just you, or maybe you plus one, it was the right move. In fact, it's very possible that until just recently, doing almost everything yourself, or all of it, was exactly the right thing to do. To be transparent with you, a point of tension that's in my business right now is that my team is growing so that we can serve more clients. And I'm hesitating pulling the trigger on hiring somebody to just work in the business on business things. Why? Because it's an overhead expense. I can just do those tasks myself in the margins. What happens though is sometimes invoices get sent out late, which means we get paid late. What happens though is sometimes tasks just don't get done because I run out of time. What happens though is that my calendar becomes overwhelmed with meetings and I can no longer take sales calls because I'm too busy doing the other things. I'm living this moment with you. We are in the same place side by side, and I'm speaking to you from the frame of reference of I get it, and maybe I need to hear this podcast too, so you are along for the ride with me. DIY was the right move at the beginning, but you, my friend, have outgrown it. And it's time to trust your team or others out in the marketplace to step in and help. Now, the last thing that I'm going to say about this, and if you're here with me in this conversation, then this may not apply to you. There is just a smidge of bravado and ego and bragging rights when you do it all yourself. You can spin yourself the tale that you are outworking and outperforming and outlasting the competition because you do it all. And I invite you, with humility, to evaluate if you're making decisions because they're the right thing for the business or if they're the right thing for your public persona. As somebody who used to wear it as a badge of honor that she worked more than anybody else, I can tell you, it didn't really matter. The only thing that mattered were the results. And if I was able to get those results in 6 hours instead of 60, nobody was keeping track, except for me. That big pat on the back that I was looking for, I had to reach my arm around and give myself because nobody cared. So if you are doing everything yourself so that you can say and you can tell the world and you can demonstrate that you've got it handled all on your own, ask yourself if it's for the right reasons. So as I mentioned, there's a real cost to doing things on your own in your business. The example that I gave at the top of the episode with the corporate leader, when we sat down and we calculated the real cost, because we did a deep dive on kind of what had happened so that that wouldn't happen again. That project ran over time and money, and unfortunately for many people that ended up having some negative backlash from clients, it ended their careers or got them sidelined. And so we did a pretty intensive deep dive and understanding about what went wrong, what we could do differently, and how to improve, because that was just the first of very many implementations that we were doing, and we knew that we couldn't afford the time, that we couldn't afford to learn the same lessons, that we couldn't afford the real cash expense of the circumstance that we were in. And that miscalculation on our part around how to handle that circumstance, the real cost of that, when we sat down and calculated it, was north of $5 million. The real cost, the dollars and cents that we were able to add up. And it was $5 million that we didn't need to lose. Think about it. If we had really had to invest $1 million to get somebody else to do the standard operating procedures transition plan and training, we would have still avoided $4 million of cost. Sometimes that initial price tag is overwhelming. It seems ludicrous. It seems like you cannot rationalize why you should spend that money. And then, months or years down the line, you realize that the savings was actually in the cost you avoided. One of the things that we often do with small businesses is we recommend very, very fast that they have an employee handbook and that all of their people processes are defined and in place. And the reason for that is because that's the biggest liability risk point in a business, hands down. And it's because you're hiring humans and employment laws are really, really different in every single jurisdiction in the United States. And there's a lot of nuance involved with how you manage people. And because of that, because of the complexity, the biggest potential risk to your business is an unhappy employee or contractor that decides to be litigious. And so often the cost of implementing contracts and performance management plans and goal setting and one-on-ones and employee handbooks and paid time off procedures and benefits plans, and I could go on and on and on and on, is hefty. There's an initial price tag to get all of that set up, and then there's an initial cost to the business to just make sure it's all being followed and adhered to. I can tell you, though, that if you've ever sat in arbitration for an employment law case, they almost always cost at least $1 million. And you almost always settle. Very rarely do they go to trial. And even if they do, you're still out legal costs. And so even if you have to spend $25,000 to have your people processes and policies documented and implemented, isn't it worth $25,000 if you can avoid spending $1 million on a litigious employee? The answer is always yes. And because we can't actually see the revenue come in the door, because you're never actually going to get a check cut for $1 million saying, congratulations, nobody sued you, it feels like the air is leaving your balloon. But there is a cost savings related to some of the expense, the real cost you're going to have when you don't do it yourself. Now, that was an exaggerated example, but I use it because it's a really real one, and it's a conversation point that I have with a lot of small businesses because they just don't want to spend the money. They trust their people, they have good people, they hire good people, we take care of them, nobody's going to leave. I've heard it all before, and I've seen it all fall apart. I'm a dream stealer today, I guess, in that regard. It's important, though, to understand that when you stop doing it yourself and you start having other people do things, sometimes there's a cost, but often there's cost avoidance that comes with it too. Now, another thing that I want to talk to you about when we think about the cost of you doing it all of yourself is your time. What should you really be doing in the business? What brings the most value? what grows the business the most? Almost every business owner will say that it is creating new products, so innovating, or serving and servicing clients, or selling, or negotiating deals. Very rarely have I ever spoken with a business owner who says the very best thing that they're at and the thing that they love to do the most is running of the business. I very, very rarely hear that. And so if you are not spending the majority of your time doing growth-related activities for the business, it's time for you to stop doing things yourself. It's time for you to start delegating. It's time for you to start hiring temporary support to take those things off your plate, because you are losing time. And you can't get it back. When you are distracted by these other things, what that means is you are not focused on what matters, and that time is gone forever. When you focus on $10 tasks, you stop making $10,000 decisions. I want to invite you to think just for a little bit about all of the tasks that you do every day. When you are buried in minutia, you think in minutia. When you can look up and out at the big picture, you start to look and dream big. The basic premise of 10x is easier than 2x. It is a book. You should go read it. The basic premise is that when you stop focusing on the small, the astronomically big can happen. It is a reframe of your focus. And so what that means is that the cost to your business when you're focusing on the $10 tasks isn't just your time. So you are stealing from the business, from your employees, from your contractors, from your clients. The innovation, the growth, the ideas, the conversations, the decisions that you could be making to have a 10x impact. The $10 tasks get you to 2x maybe. And here is something I want to say, because I say this often and I think it starts to get confused. There is a principle in business to do it again. I preach on this. I have spoken on stage on this. I have talked to the media about this. When you hit your first million, your goal number one is to do it again. And when you hit your first 2 million, your goal is to do it again. There are things, when you hit certain milestones in your business, forever and ever and amen, do the things that got you to 1 and 2 and 5 and 10. Because those become the baseline. Those become business as usual. And that business, whatever it was that got you to $1 million, that's what you let other people step in and do, because you know what it takes to do it over and over and over. But to go from 1 to 5, you don't know what that's going to take, and that's where your focus is. That's where your attention is. It's in the big leaps. It's in the big moves. It's in the dream biggers. It's in the, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to figure it out. We talked at the beginning about how you shouldn't do everything yourself anymore once you stop being a solopreneur. You don't have to figure it out anymore. But what you have to figure out is you have to figure out how you're going to grow. How you're going to take the steady state and make it better to make your business better. The do it again principle means that now that you've done it once, teach everybody else to do it so they can keep doing it over and over and over again. I was just talking to a client about this the other day. One of the things that she sells is now at a place where that will pay for the operating expense in the business forever and ever and ever, and it will continue to grow because it is consistent. We know what it is. We know how to fulfill it. We know what the experience is. We know how to talk about it. We know how to sell it. We know what it renews into, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We know what the life cycle model is. And the cool thing is that she needs nothing to do with it because she built it. She refined it. She taught other people how to do it, and now she can let it go and do its thing. It will continue to make $1 million, $2 million, $3 million in her business that she doesn't even need to think about because it's just running the machine as it is. She no longer needs to be playing in the 2x space because it can 2x with the team it has. This is the example of the $10 tasks versus the $10K decisions. You have to retire yourself from the low-level things in order to be able to do the impossible. I invite you to start thinking bigger and more intentionally for yourself and start asking your team to do the things that you know are the winning strategy. The other thing that's going to happen if you continue to do all of this yourself, if you continue to dive in, if you say, I can do it faster than you guys, I'll figure it out, I'll let you know how to go, is you are going to burn out. You are going to have decision fatigue. Do you end your day and can you not figure out what to have for dinner? Can you get to the weekend and decide what restaurant you want to go to? Do you get to some point of your week and you're like, please, people, stop talking to me. I cannot handle any more words? That's because you're doing too much on your own and you're not delegating. You will become the bottleneck. Your business will slow down, and over time it will shrink and it will break because you are simply in the way. Think about, this is the picture I like to paint because it's so freaking obvious and we all know what it is. You are driving down a country road and all of a sudden there are 5 cows and they are standing in the middle of the road and they have no intention of moving. You are the herd of cows. You are the one standing in the road. You are the one where traffic is now piling up in both directions because you're all standing there and can't move. Nobody can figure out how to budge you. Everybody's a little bit scared of you, so they don't want to get out of the car and start yelling and screaming because they don't know what's going to happen. You're an animal after all. You are the herd of cows. And I use that example specifically because nobody can pick you up and move you. You own the business. If you were doing everything yourself, you were getting in the way. I promise you, if you start delegating and stop doing it all, amazing things are going to happen in your business. So the last thing is I want to talk to you about this whole concept of delegation. So if you're still with me, if you have lasted the 27 minutes and you're like, I am buying what you're selling and I don't need to do all this stuff anymore, but Melissa, how do I get to the point where I'm not doing it? Listen the freaking up, okay? Listen up. The best way to delegate, and to delegate forever and ever, amen, is to get the standard operating procedures written down. If you have a team, have them write them down. If you have a team, have them present them to you. You approve. They create. SOPs that everybody follows. With those SOPs, you have defined success metrics, tangible things you can count and track and set goals around and standards around. And then you establish controls, otherwise known as checkpoints. Are you looking at this information on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis? How are they reporting this out? How do you know things are on track or off track? Get processes and procedures defined, have somebody else do the definition, and you approve it. Set metrics and expectations and measurements, and then measure, and then you review the results so that you know how things are going and you can make adjustments over time. The second is you can manage without micromanaging. When you set up SOPs and expectations and metrics and dashboards and controls and all of the things, then you get to have a conversation about the results. When you talk about results, you're not talking about the tasks. When you're talking about the tasks, you're micromanaging. When you can get yourself to a place where you're talking about results, where you're talking about timelines, where you're talking about expectations, where you're talking about delivery, where you're talking about behaviors, you are now managing, not micromanaging. Stop talking about tasks. Start talking about functions. and results. And then the last way to delegate well is that you hire for outcome, not effort. When you are interviewing candidates and you are bringing people into the business, your conversations and your expectations should be set around the results, the deliverables, the KPIs and metrics, the minimum performance standards. They should not be about how much they grind, how hard they sweat, how many hours they log. All you care about is the outcome. All you care about are the results. Let them figure out how and how much and how long to achieve the goals that are set in front of them. So here's what I want you to do as the next step, because I know that this was a lot. Maybe some tough love, maybe some analogies that made you roll your eyes. One never knows what you're going to get around here. I invite you to do the following. Spend the next week, you decide where you start it, spend the next 5 business days, and at the end of every day, write down all the things that you did and identify what you could have delegated and to whom. And sometimes you could say, I could have delegated this, but I don't have a person to delegate it to. Okay? 5 days. All the things that you did, identify what you could have delegated instead of doing it yourself. Then, what you want to do is identify what you can delegate to your internal team, and then talk to them and delegate the work going forward, whatever it might be. The things that you can delegate and you don't have a person for, evaluate whether hiring somebody now is the right move or when it will be. And then create a strategy to get to a place if you need to grow your business further to afford it, or you need to restructure some things to give that person enough work to do. There's a variety of reasons why, but until you get to the place where you can delegate that work to somebody on your team, you keep doing it, but your line of sight, your goal point is that gets off your plate. If you have the appetite to do this for more than 1 week, I recommend that you do, because some of the things that you do week 1 aren't going to be the same things that you do week 2. You have to pay attention to how you're spending your time, and then the goal should be that you delegate as much as possible. You clean your plate as much as possible so you leave white space for the things that you're best at in the business. When you go through this exercise over and over and over again, it's going to do 2 things. It's going to empower your team, and it's going to free up your time. And as a bonus, it's going to tell you where you're overly involved and you need to pull back. It's time for you to stop doing everything in your business if you're no longer the only employee in your business. So I invite you to consider how you can leverage delegation and how you can save your business some money and allow it to grow faster by stopping the madness and not requiring to do it all yourself. Until we meet again next time, friends, please know that you are wise and you are capable and you are strong, and I believe in you.